those cases of, we're speaking about drainage, we're speaking about binders. You know, only about 2 weeks ago, I was out in Windsor area, and I was there like maybe about 3 or 4 months before, and the area it was mud and so on. And I saw they did some work, put in some binders, and so the driving through that area was so much easier. So the point I'm making is that a simple thing as this will help to make a lot of our lands and our farms more productive, and persons can go back to their lands, you know, having to walk whole half an hour with 2 bunch of fig because they have to make many. Look, I was speaking to a farmer only recently. He's involved in planting. You see, when he's doing bananas, like obviously carrying the load back to his vehicle where he parked. 10 at 45 and 55, he may say $60 because that's another big issue, the cost of labor. So could you imagine? So he would have to spend almost $600 to carry these goods back to his shop. How could he make money? Oh.
You know, speaking of roads, you mentioned an interesting element, the whole issue of binders on those farm roads. And I've had occasion to see how that worked very well. Okay. The thing about it is, oftentimes that work is done, but because you do not have appropriate drainage,
Right.
as we get a couple showers of rains, that is washed away. So the thousands of dollars that's just been spent has been negated, and you have to come and do it all over again.
Correct.
And what do you think, what kind of approaches do you think is required to ensure that we don't just put binders and make it look good and it lasts momentarily, but that we ensure that we put the appropriate systems in place so that when it's done, it can last for an extended period? Because we know back in the day, right, when we didn't have many of the estates, the roads were not pitched and so, but they were maintained, the drainage and so were maintained, and you had a situation where you had the farm trucks and they didn't have four-wheel drives and so as they do now. And the farm trucks will be up inside of the fields and so, and be able to carry products out. So how do we manage that so that we can get maximum output from it?
Well, I think two things we have to look at. I mean, one, you have to get competent persons, not because maybe some farmers say, okay, well, we need to get some binders. You don't just say, okay, come collect the binders and go and do it yourself. I mean, we supposed to have proper technical persons within the various ministries. But I will tell you, if done properly, there are engineers around who will gladly come. Some of the same farmers have family, maybe children, who have this sort of technical capacities to recommend how this could be done. Of course, not every area need binders, drains, depend on how the slope is and how the land is set up. But what you're saying is very important. So in some cases, maybe you may have to do some concrete slipper drains. In some cases, ensuring the drains are proper, ensuring the embankment, because that's another area, slides coming down and then water go across the road and it cut the road, and so on. So it's about doing proper assessment. I mean, and I don't think that we are short of that capacity in Grenada. We have, I mean, hundreds of these technical persons around. I don't think that is an issue. And I show in a lot of cases, they will gladly volunteer 2 hours to provide some technical guidance in that regards. But of course, you have to ask. If you don't ask, the biggest problem, one of the biggest problem I found in Pablo, and maybe I learned these things maybe from my schooling in America. the first thing you never forget, never. In fact, if you go to America, you realize that it's a place, and I mean, I've been to Canada to see specific, but maybe as a developed country, the issue of help.
The issue of?
Pardon me? The
The
issue of
issue of
help,
what?
the issue of
Help.
help.
Mhm.
You know, there is something showing you, some manual, somebody you can call, and you need, before you break something, before you cut it because you think you're not fitting, pick up the phone, call. The knowing when you need help is the most important thing to me in success. Help is always important. And so if you watch this thing doesn't look right, it's about, let me get a second opinion. Let me see how, you know, I'm saying this, that it's an approach that helps to be successful, seeking help. Even if you think you have the idea, there is nothing wrong in getting another opinion.
I agree. You spoke a while ago about training, and recently on a radio program, the Beyond the Headline program, the Prime Minister was being interviewed, and he mentioned about Grenada being essentially a marine state. We have more water than land space, but you have a situation where our education system is not designed so as to maximize the benefits that can be accrued from our water space and so. And he did speak about the need for there to be, as you mentioned a while ago, you know, putting that kind of system in place, that kind of mechanism in place. And so what would you say, how much would you say we are missing out on that element of the opportunities that are there across the board, whether it is in fishing, whether it is in the marina section or whatever? How much would you say we are missing out?
Yeah, well, I think we're missing out, and we are missing out because, you see, Pablo, hold on. I'm trying to keep it very simple. No, I'm trying to make this thing so simple because it's so logical and obvious. Now, you see, sometimes I didn't understand importance of it until also a few years ago in my life. I said the issue of focus and vision, that we want to be, you know, what you want things to look like. I think all have the same aspirations. The 2035 vision, sustainable development plan for Grenada, it was a broad encompassing document that I always reference because I think, I mean, from my read of it, in not only agriculture, the other species, it's Grenadian authentic feelings that is expressed inside of it. And so what needs to happen is that you have to build the capacity. The capacity, we spoke about, whether it's roads, whether it's infrastructure, but education. Even if not necessarily a school per se, like a physical building, but education as a knowledge transfer is in itself an infrastructure. And so you have to sit down and figure out as leaders and so if we want to do very good in root crops and we have to train these same youth we spoke about in root crop production. So we have to make sure that there are programs, whether it's a 3 months program, a 6 months program, that they go and they actively learn, and there's a rigid arrangement there, you know, and whether it's rabbit rearing, etc. So I say that, and so the whole issue about the farm school, I know everybody run back to that. And again, it come back to management, leadership, vision, accountability. it's all about that. Eh? If you really want to make it happen successfully. No, an issue of the marine, I am fully in agreement. In fact, I've called in my previous stint as in the Senate, actually had a motion to look at the whole issue of reviewing the TAMCC Team Community College curriculum to able to cater for the whole issue to support the marine and fisheries sector. Of course, it doesn't even have to be in a TAMCC framework, but some institute to address those areas. Of course, I've seen the government has it within its mandate, and I'm happy to see that. But TAMCC by now should already start activating, agitating, and start having a draft program as to what this marine school, a marine associate degree, and fishing degree should look like. Because when you speak to the fishermen, the issue of making seines, repairing seine, boat building, maintenance, the small engine repairs. And the only recollection I recall of any serious thing outside of the revolution and the school of fishing is Nulo. I know doing something with seine, maybe or some short-term course, and something to do with fiberglass boat building, some sort of thing like that. But we have to, because when you speak to the fishermen, the same fisherman who come in, he have to be doing some of the maintenance himself, because where is that service where you could take your boat, bring it there, and someone service it, just like how you take your vehicle to the mechanic and then you pick it up afterwards. So we do need that, but I don't see why that is a big challenge, because you command TAMCC, as the case may be, to put a draft program in place, because this is a mandate that we have. Whether you put a core group of persons, the different expertise, they come up with a draft working document, whether it's a town hall mechanism to start it off with and get some broad ideas, and you have an online forum, and how do you incorporate other actors in the society, the civil society. They can able to do all of the legwork for you that you may not able to do as a government.
So speaking of this, you mentioned about the Sustainable Development Plan. We know that we have SIAP, which is the Sustainable Agriculture Economic Project, I think it is.
SIAP is the Sustainable the Rural Development. A lot of museum. SIAP, Sustainable Enterprise Development. Yes, Sustainable Enterprise.
Agriculture Enterprise
Development.
But whatever it is, we know what it gets. How significant do you think a project or a program like SIAP is towards really accomplishing some of those stuff, or addressing some of those rural development issues that you've been speaking to?
Well, my understanding of SIAP is that we have to see where SIAP came from. SIAP came out of phase 1 and phase 2 of what was a market access rural enterprise development project, which was MAREP. Yeah. And they was focusing on how do you build market connection with farmers, how do you support them at the production level. This project now is my understanding that it's focused a lot on looking at the smart agriculture approach, the climate smart approach, in the same context of marketing and sales, but the farmers would have a more climate smart approach to his farming or to his fishing, whether using greenhouses, irrigation, and those sort of smart approaches. Of course, yes, definitely, those are important steps. The question is, at the same time, people will say, what is the impact? What is the impact? And in programs like this, the impact is 2 things for me. What is the practice on the ground? much money. These are the two issues you have to look at. Of course, I know there are steering committees and other people involved. I'm not directly involved at that in that zone, but I know they have been working. I know farmers and fishers who have had benefits, but there are challenges that would have been reported to the project in terms of the slowness with which they were able to get certain things, because I myself would have done some inquiries as to what is happening. And in some cases, these projects, and then when you deal with co-financing again, it leads to challenges in terms of disbursement of monies. Then you have some committee that have to meet and go to something, and then so that when you have those other situations, if you are on committees to be authorizing things, committees to be reviewing things, we need to be proactive. We need to be basically doing what we're supposed to do in the quickest possible time. And you have that a lot of times. Well, we could deal with that later on. People's lives are waiting on this. The amount of farmers that used to be calling me, yes, they came and they do the assessment, and we don't hear nothing again. And I would follow up, and yeah, the committee has to meet. Well, maybe the wrong people on the committee, they are too busy doing other things, so then get people who have time to be on the committee. Most of these are volunteers, but even if it's volunteering, I mean, make time.
Well, speaking of which, we see that as we on the SIEP issue, and you mentioned greenhouses and so, we see that with the extended period of rainfalls we've been having, it has, and I guess you are very much aware of that, that many of our short crop farmers in particular have been significantly affected. I've been hearing stories of farmers who put on how many trees, 1,000 plants and so, and it just lost because of that. How much do you think, and what do you think we should be doing in terms of these alternative approaches like greenhouses and so as to mitigate against these kinds of situations? Because with the rains as they're falling now, the farmers, the prospects of really being successful in that aspect of farming is very challenging.
Well, I wouldn't even call it challenging. I would say it's a dead game. I challenge some like, oh well, you were able to get over it. Farmers lose a lot of money, and they have the courage, and they plant back sometime midstream after they lose and hooping. Because that's what farmers are. I mean, farmers don't give up despite all the challenges that they face. But I would tell you, I've learned many years ago that this period from late September, October, November, it what is referred to as vegetable full season. Not my word, I coined it from one of my previous colleagues. Vegetable full, and you're right, vegetables, basically shortcut, full season. And whilst rain and so on is good, too much rain is not good. You have, I mean, a litany of challenges, from flooding to erosion to loss of palms to disease. I hardly even want to speak about disease, because by the time the crop reach halfway and he die, he did not wait for disease to even take it. So that is a big challenge, and I will tell you the consequence of that challenge. Outside of the loss of money, the challenge turned out that normally in December you hardly have any vegetables, and then come January, February, you see the flood, because that would be the consequence of the farmers trying to plan back late November to sort of keep their resilience, because they have to feed their family. Now, to address that problem, agriculture, you have to look at protective agriculture. And this, you have to protect the crop from the abundance of the rains. As wise we may think water is, that too much water is not good for farming. Another time, too much is not good. And so protecting
and even for those flowering trees too.
Well, that is another, so you lose a lot. You lose a lot of those flaws. I mean, especially things like nutmeg and all of those things. You lose a lot, and even in nutmeg and cocoa, you lose a lot of the black pods. You can't go to the farm easily to pick up the crops. So it's a challenge. So if we do protection, particularly for the short crop, this is an area that we need to look at. Of course, while there are fancy greenhouses and shade houses that can cost thousands of dollars, I know locally. And then if you even go on the internet, you will see in a lot of places in Africa and so on, they're basically building simple cover it with the plastic. Of course, you have different quality of plastic covering, etc. To protect from this abundance of rain coming in and creating problems. And of course, you can then do your different irrigation system, drip, etc. Put up your tanks, different places, and manage the inflow of water into the farm on the crop. So protection of the agriculture. I mean, someone may say, well, oh, what about if it's pumpkin, or what about if it's watermelon? I've seen in China, watermelons, pumpkin, cantaloupe, within the greenhouse structure. And so it begs the question, which a lot of persons ask, what are these Chinese doing here? Are we learning anything? Are they bringing anything? What are we asking them for? But who is to ask them? Don't tell me it's the senator again to ask them. You know, but but that is something that we need to make a conscious effort to increase. Now, I think there is some project going on with FAO, working again with a few farmers, maybe 5 or 6 farmers helping in greenhouse. That might sound nice, but in terms of the impact you need, the amount of farmers involved, does that make sense? So again, it's through financing. We have to create a market, because if the farmers have a market, they know where they will sell the product. They mean that they would have an income. We have to engage, especially like the credit unions. I try not to almost forget GDB, as free to call him name, because they give farmers so much problems. GDB, Grenada Development Bank, and so on, which we can have special financing for that. I know there's a German project, G-Cruise project, which I know is specifically assisting with water. It's some water challenge, and you spend the money, and then you show that you spend it, and then they reimburse you, etc. So what we need to look at maybe is protection challenge. You may have 10 acres of land. We may not be able to cover 10 acres, but you might be able to cover quarter acre. So it's better than nothing at all. So at least food would be available. And because you see, when food gets scarce, look at the price of tomatoes in December, $6 or $7.
Yep.
And it's not that the farmer want to charge that, but when he lost 2 or 3 crops all year, he need to recoup his investment, not from the crop now, but from the part before, because who is really paying him for that? He's off his pocket. I mean, most farmers not like the real businesses, which would have a big overdraft and cut a check and have this sort of collateral and those things like that. Not at all. So every money they invest, they have to find a way to recoup it. And it's not that they go in and they want to go hand to mouth, penny, go and beg the government for
with all that you've spoken about, and given the fact that there's a wide range of stakeholders to this whole agriculture business, has there ever been, and do you think there is a need, or it can make any difference, if there was to be a national symposium on agriculture?
Yes, we need to have a national symposium, and it's important. I will tell you, and for the public's understanding, we're not speaking on a budget consultation. We're speaking about it. No, you're on track.
Mhm.
I know about 2 years ago, the Minister for Agriculture, we had some dialogue, and there was a symposium, a one-day session at the trade center, and there were some outputs from that. During the COVID, we had a joint one with fishing and so on. But those are just scratching the surface. And of course, I agree that we need to have, but it has to be done properly. That's the other point. It has to be done properly, and it has to be but and it's not about trying to get ideas in terms of where we're going, because we are very clear where we want to go. But it's the how. Like those discussions we speak about, you take a challenge and you say, how do we deal with this challenge? So the symposium should be, how do we finance agriculture at the different levels? Because even the supermarkets, the hoteliers, the vendors, they need financing too. Not only the farmer, they are, because they may have to invest in chillers, marketing, merchandising way to ensure that the stuff is displayed properly. They are all part of that value chain that need to be looked at. So you hear sometimes people, oh, it's valid, and they use the word, but the action to it is not taking place. But also, Pablo, because it's another important point in all of this scheme, even having the right varieties, sometimes the varieties of the crops that we have is not suited for the weather. We speak about the rain, so you have varieties for the dry season, varieties for the rainy are also considerations, and whether they are available. Because what is happening is that the collaboration, and that is why this symposium I just speaking is worthy. Another isolation, private discussion, you all need to do better. Have a dialogue platform.
So I'm really speaking about bringing into play all of those stakeholders that you referred to, not just the farmers, but you have those people who are involved in the marketing, who are involved in all of the other elements, you bring every stakeholder together, because everyone has their own level of challenges, and you make a determination as to how do all of these people network together to ensure that we can get maximum benefit from our agriculture and our agricultural production.
Well, Pablo, I know you play a clip of me earlier on, but I think you need to maybe play not the last Senate we just come out in yesterday, special sitting, the Senate before. You need to maybe go and clip out where I table a motion whereby we need to have a national stakeholder committee, multi-sectorial, to address the whole issue of food, nutrition, security, and food sovereignty. And it is council, and that will solve the problem. So, and of course, maybe Food and Nutrition Council designed differently, and you make it a multi-sectorial Food and Nutrition Council may work. But I mean, that's chalk and cheese. It's two different issues. And what you're saying there is exactly the point. You get the stakeholders together and you put those systems in place. You could then have symposiums, you could have this, and as a nation, we build a collectivism. We have to not lose sight of the optics and do what is right, do what is good and what is correct. Otherwise, we'll all suffer, right? Meaning that some may suffer later because they may have a little bit more resource, but those that are vulnerable and fully exposed, they're going to go quick. And so we have to be well intent in those areas. And what you're saying there will solve all of this problem. In fact, this approach of the whole food system and the value chain incorporation, these are normal strategies that are used to get things done. Even, for example, and I want to raise it because within that same framework, right, we have done before, I've been central to some of this, what we refer to as a tool called a buyer growers symposium, buyer growers meeting. So for example, let us suppose you want to look at, don't do it too broad because you have to kind of narrow it. So let's suppose you want to look at root crops, or you want to look at the salad fruits. So let's suppose you want to look at poultry, or you want to look at maybe goats, You take that specific areas, you get the buyers, you get the growers, you get maybe some of the input suppliers, you sit down, the technical people, the financiers, because all they are part of this. And you sit down and you say, okay, the buyers must say, and that is a problem that we have. There is not enough symmetry in information, particularly from the buyers end. The buyers should say, okay, I need 10,000 pounds of this. I need 500 heads of this nationally. And then you use this and you start driving planning. So when you and the growers sit down, the growers say, okay, boy, all right, I can do 500 pounds in December and January and February because the amount of land I have, that is all I could do. Land I have, based on the workers I have, maybe I don't have irrigation, so I in the dry season I cannot do anything much. So you sit down and you put this mechanism in place and you match, and then you start discussing prices. But you remember where we started? The Ministry of Agriculture having a template, knowing how to produce, what to produce, the cost to produce. And then a bank could easily come and say, okay, Tom, you want to produce this, it's going to cost you that, you're going to make such and such. I'm willing to give you a loan for $5,000 to be able that you can supply Foodland. And not only that, Foodland Central Operating Account might be in the same institution because the institution want to see Foodland do well. So you build those synergies inside of that. And then when you come down and say, well, look, okay, so we would ensure that we have the seedlings because we know where the market coming, you get maybe the seedling producers. And you don't have to give the farmers money. Farmers don't want money. They don't want, what they want is the things to make things work to give them money. But the issue is, me and you could talk about this on the long and do these things.
I want to bring in
so sometimes when we speak about those things, it kind of wondering who will do these things.
Well, that's why we need to have these kinds of conversations, so that the awareness is developed and you get more people having an appreciation of what needs to be done, and we can put ourselves in a position to get government, to get the administration to respond. There is something some time ago, I want to bring in Brother John as a man who comes from a rural community and so on, has been involved before he migrated, was involved at that level. And I know the issue I'm going to raise right now when he comes on is something that is dear to his heart too, really. But before I do that, and I hope I'm not going to steal his thunder, the issue of cooperatives, that's something that you had raised. And based on certain established rules or regulations as to how many people can form a cooperative and so can constitute a cooperative, you were recommending that the numbers be decreased, because oftentimes it's a challenge to get the appropriate number so you can get the cooperative going. And so how successful have you been in that regard? And how much of an impact do you think cooperatives can have on all of these things that we're talking about?
No, well, cooperatives definitely is important because it creates opportunities to access all different type of resources and also build capacities among themselves and so on. In terms of how successful I was in making those statements, I would say that the last 2021, I think it was, budget, I remember the Minister for Cooperatives, Honorable Yolande in Oxford, saying that this is a matter that they had done to review the Cooperative Act and law. And I would say within that space, there would have been opportunity for that dialogue. Of course, well, that never really took place. But I trust that this is a matter that we're going to look at in this space. I haven't raised it publicly yet. But I mean, there are so many things on the agenda that I have to prioritize. Pre-elasticity, all of those things, and them is more burning right now. But in terms, even from a national farmers organization, is also a very important matter that we need to look at. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I have models from different countries for dialoguing, and that is on my agenda to pursue. I have some other in situ thoughts to even fast track that, which I wouldn't divulge now because that forms into a broader strategy of involvement, right? But we need to do that because in that way, farmers would be able to become stronger in terms of the amount of collection of resources. Farmers would be able to start organizing their own markets and become more powerful in the food space. And that would also ease up the Ministry of Agriculture in a lot of ways. The farmers could start having their own extension services, having their own packing houses, their own outlets to sell their own things. And so those are the type of ideas, but we have to sit down, you have to talk, you have to sell it, people have to buy it, you can push it. You understand what I'm saying there?
I got you.
The support from the various stakeholders towards that mission. So, and then it have to be, I wouldn't say that it have to be depoliticized, but it must not be political. And one thing I would tell you, Pablo, which you may also discover, farmers discuss the politics one way, and when it comes to the business, they discuss that different way. It's two different issues.
That's it ought to be as a people.
Exactly. So those things and them must not be mixed up and confused. They will fight you hard here for the business. And then they fight you hard here in the other way for the politics. And that is nice. And so we mustn't confuse that they are equal. And that is what I know. Yes. They're not all the same. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because before I bring in Brother John, I want him to play this clip for me, right? A clip that he should have lined up there. I want him to play that and have you deal with that, and then
you want me to deal with that?
Yeah, yes, I want him to play that clip, and then you're going to address that issue, right? And we'll move on. We'll have Brother John come in with his own questions after us. Brother John, you line up.
I find that sound like a marijuana issue.
Well,
during the details.
Yeah.
Noticeably absent. I was hoping to hear the Spice Project, which I think was a major announcement in the campaign. I didn't hear anything about that. I guess maybe during the details of the debate that may come out, but that was a major pronouncement. And noting that spices, nutmeg in particular, from even where I sit, is one of the main income earner for agriculture export. I thought that would have heard something there. I think also marijuana. You have a big committee for marijuana, and I was looking forward to hear some pronouncement there.
So,
yeah, well, I didn't even know where you're going, but
Senator said yes. You're a mind reader. So you mentioned that these were not. You spoke about these not being mentioned in the presentation.
Yes.
But earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned about certain line items. What have been your findings so far? Was there anything that you found in relation to these two issues?
Yeah, very good, very well done, very well done. Of course, the Spice Project, what I discover is that it is listed, but I'm only seeing money listed, I think some $200,000 in 2024 or something like that. So there was no money listed in it now. Although I know on the ground that the Ministry of Agriculture, the propagation team they are working on that because, for example, particularly with nutmeg, we have been working with the propagating team of the specific Banda Papa type of nutmegs. So I know that is going on. So based on that intimacy, but in terms of money there to support what they are doing, I didn't see it in 2023. I put on my glasses about 3 times, so I hope I didn't see wrong. But I know though that work is taking place despite what the budget may say there. So that is fairness. In terms of the marijuana, of course, I think that is a major item. And I thought that in a budget speech, such a major, because that has a lot of impact, not just on the Rastafarian, but the religious community, the society as a whole, onlookers from the diaspora, investors, and so on. But of course, the leader of government business in the presentation in the Senate would have speak specifically to the issue of medicinal marijuana would be the focus. And of course, I have some concerns, particularly when I look again at the Sustainable Development Plan 2025, and they speak of the composition of that plan, of that committee. There's a whole long list, about 12 different civil society, religious society, etc. And farmers was also listed to be part of that committee. And I'm still trying to figure out who is the farmer on that committee. And so I think that, I don't know if that was used as a cue to farm it, if that was farmed outside, but I found it very strange that all the other listing was there and the farmer in particular was the one left out. And that I think is a kind of disservice to my constituents, and it's something I'd call for. I know there's good notes that was taken by the government side, and I trust that is some consideration that they should give to this, because farmers are the landowners. They are the one that participate in the system. They are the one who have a vested interest in this also. It's not that marijuana not growing on trees. I mean, not growing in the air, growing on lands. How do you deal with all those? And then we have to be fair to ourselves. So that is from that space, I would say. But I know I want to, say a special hill to the INM up in the north, I think is Ronan and Taylor and Baptiste and Sty, and those guys were in the parliament both day one and day two, listening into the debate, sitting down there. They were there. I mean, I remember one night we finished like about after 7, and they were there with us, following, seeking the interest. And that is the sort of interest we need by the not only the farmers and the Rastafarian, but the nation. Yes, you can stay home and look at the parliament, but sitting down in the halls and looking at the interaction and seeing it live, you're not seeing that on TV. What you're seeing is someone speaking, but the interaction, the feel, the vibes. I think we need more of our persons, more of our nation to come out and participate, because it gives us more purpose. It put more purpose to what we are debating. And when you can see the persons, if you have something to say to do with the disability bill or something like that, like, you should come on. Like yesterday, we are discussing the issue about alcohol and cigarettes and so on. Somebody, and maybe even create a lobby to us before we go inside, bring some more real life to this, because the input that we would make, both the government side and both the other side, is a collectivism of the knowledge and information to able to bring a better decision. And this to me is something that I would like to see. I know we're not speaking about that, but also even from the parliament itself, the parliament itself needs to do some work in terms of education of the public, in terms of, for example, a simple thing. I shouldn't say a simple thing. I shouldn't say that at all. For example, there is what you call the order of business, and there's something called the order paper. So when we go there, there is an agenda, there's an approach how things. Government has its business, its motion, its bills. Then you go to public business. you have the questions, you have petitions, you have motions, you have private members' bills, you have, and so the government has its side. And when the government finishes its side, that's part. Then the public has its own, always be the opposition and the other side independent, etc. And both in the upper house and lower house. So I think we need to have this sort of sharing so persons can understand how all of these dynamics fit in and how they need to engage with their MPs, engage with the senators to ensure that their voices and their knowledge and their wishes is agitated in that. I think don't depend on us just speaking. Yeah, we could call on interface, but I think that is an important part that I would really like to see in 2023 into 2024, if we can able to educate our citizens more on our parliamentary process. Even for example, the issue of the yay and the nay and whether you do the voting, how these are important things that you need to see and understand. You know, the words people may use and interjections, and we need to do more. And I trust that the parliament, and I haven't said that because it's a short sitting yesterday, but it's something that I would speak to, because the more our people look at the Rastas, they were there, they came there and they seek the interest. So sometimes they get success and they say, how come? Because they came there, they understand the process, they know how to lobby. They came with a letter and they give me a letter, and they give the minister a letter and they say, these are our issues that we want to raise, reparation, this, that, they want land. They make a representation. It's our job to agitate. And so I say this and I get very emotional about that, because it's not about just us alone sitting in the chamber. And I'm speaking, and no, it's not maybe on my own behalf. I'm sure I can speak on behalf of all my colleagues inside and on all sides of the parliament, especially the Senate.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. And we expect that GMFM and is going to be playing a major role in terms of helping to sensitize people on these issues going forward. Brother John,
yes,
the mic is yours now to speak with the senator.
Again, good evening.
Sorry for holding you out that long,
that's okay,
but you know, there's so much. We would have to bring back the senator sometime.
Yes, I've been educated here, you know, a little bit. I want to say again, thank you again, family, because my in-law, you know, and I want to thank you again.
Yes, all the time.
Yes, for your commitment to the workers, farmers of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. You have been long-standing and done a lot in that area. I will talk about the Rastafarian, and again, that's one thing. Then you had the question of cooperatives and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I left Grenada in 1989, and when I left Grenada, I was the president of the Grenada Union of Productive Cooperative.
Right, PFU.
Yeah, and no, that was
different.
Yeah, different. That was Montgomery was the general secretary for that.
Okay.
We, after 1983, the corporate department totally abandoned the cooperative movement in Grenada. So what we did, we formed a cooperative with the ex-PRA from the garage, PRA garage, and other persons like myself, and we formed this union. We got funded. There was a lot of work that had to be done that was not done still. How important today for you as a senator to help revamp the cooperative movement, especially in the agricultural area? There's a lot of, and that's one thing. Secondly, with a lot of cottage industries in Grenada, how difficult it would be now to have an agro-industrial plant to do some of the same thing that the small cottage industry do, and how that could be addressed to make it more efficient in terms of exporting our products.
Well, thank you so much, and I happy you asked these questions. From one, in terms of this cooperative national organization, this is a mandate I've given to myself to achieve at the end of this tenure. Now, I would like to see a proper functioning body in terms of this national farmers and related industries, Jamaica, Trinidad, they have well-established models, and I have been in dialogue with my colleagues in those areas, and I pledge good support as soon as I'm ready to share, the ideas and concept. Of course, we have to ensure that we build from the bottom, and whilst even some of our cooperatives and organizations are not fully functional, the little that we have, we need to start. We need to start with it and go. We cannot wait for a perfect situation. There's no perfect situation.
Right.
We have to start. And so is my endeavor, because already I have a fairly good network with the various groupings and existing organizations that exist right now, right? So that is in that space, and I is a pledge that I have, and of course, I know if I call on you too, I'm not going to be worried to get help from you and even local Ladigboy, Montgomery. Of course,
Yes.
I know that. The other side, in terms of the agro-industrialization, the cottage industry, I would have spoken to that, I think way back even in my maiden speech back then when I just started into the Senate, and maybe in the first budget presentation I would have done back in, I think, 2020. I believe is my vision that when I look at what is happening, you have several small processors who trying their best in the kitchen, under the house, in the living room, making very good products. They have their own formulas. They have good interest in the product. Some of them exports, in little ways to the diaspora. Somebody come and make sure they get some candies, make sure they get some sauces, etc. Having a central facility, being a 2-acre plot, 3-acre plot. We're speaking about doing hospital. This is the hospital for agriculture, for agro products. You build on this facility a multi-using facility. So whether you could do juices, you could do this, you could do so there are different areas that the agro processors themselves doesn't even have to even really go to that place. Meaning that that place would employ people who are trained in handling and certifying different ways, and all they are doing is implementing your recipes.
Right.
And you do the packing. So for example, you could have, I have a time and I have meeting, I may have a supervisor if I want to, but I send in my stuff, they prepare it in standard way, quality way, but inside that facility, John, you would have the whole food safety system, the HACCP, which is important, the BRC certification, which is important to ship to Europe and so on. All of those compliance are inside that facility. So instead of 50 different little processors fighting up with a bank, fighting here, fighting to do this, you have that central place. But further to that, you also have a lab, a testing facilities inside there, because sometimes you're making a product and you need to test it in process testing, because you need to add this, add that, rather than when you finish, you in a home, where you getting to testing in the middle of the night, sometimes mostly because you have to go to work the next day, because most of these persons have multiple activities. So you have this facility, and I know there are persons in Grenada right now who understand this concept, who understand what it takes and what is needed, and this could be done. And this facility could operate 24 hours. It does not operate because it's there to provide the services, whether it's juicing, whether it's sausage, whether it's, we have to figure out what do we want. And then the individuals now can still have their own individual, it had to be a certain standard, and you could say package in this certified facility, and you could put a batch number and a this thing. And that to me is the vision. I don't believe, John, that this is costing us more than $5 million to get done. I
Right.
believe even within the national transformation funds, with some money,
Yeah.
this it could be done. You don't expect that to pay back itself. You could even have the private sector.
Right.
But on another note, similarly, the same IDC could find a way to finance that, and then IDC, I mean, it doesn't have to be empty factory shelves. You understand?
Right.
It could be an outfit that is made up ready for that. Whether you do it through CBI or whether you do it through whatever it is, it could be done. And similarly, going back to Pablo's point earlier regarding the protective agriculture and so on. Similarly, there is nothing wrong in IDC owning and managing 500 or 300 greenhouse packs throughout the country, and you rent it out, and people go in and put in you plant your crop if you rent it for 2 years and so on. Those models are very simple. Rather than IDC does have what I call a static shell, and I have to come and do a whole series of things inside there. There is nothing wrong in doing that investment, that infrastructure to enable. So the issue about vision, I started back with, that is how we have to see things. So if we're going to take these monies, for example, I think there is some project money, I think the Prime Minister spoke about from the World Bank. And if we don't use it strategically, 3 years from now, we gave them some fertilizer and they got some blenders, and then you come back and ask me the same question in 4 years from now, Senators in Clem, what have we done? Not sustainable. Yes.
So in other words, then the whole idea is to have one big umbrella place.
Yes.
To have that being done as on a national basis, you know, and if you choose to want to do the program, they could go and do that. But I think it's
correct
that the government set up an agro-industrial plant, where they could actually manufacture and export. And that leads to my next question, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But I want to ask you a question here, because we had a lot of talk about agro-industrial plant and stuff, and we're hearing about the MNIB and so on. How important will it be now that the farmers and the cottage industry work together to supply even small cottage industry people with the products that they have to better utilize the product that they have in the country? You see?
Yeah, how the farmers and the cottage industry have to work together?
Yes.
When you see, come back to the last discussion me and Pablo had towards the end. To the who are the buyers, who are the growers. So you get who are the agro processors. Okay, we have agro processors. For example, recently I think there was some consultation dealing with juice manufacturers. Okay, fine. Our output out of that could be okay. What are the juices made? Tamarind, mango, this, that, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, who are the farmers? Who are the producers?
Right.
And I'm not putting MNIB in the mix. You mentioned that, and I leave that on the side. I'm putting that just buyer grower. Who are these farmers? Who are these growers? How do we make this thing work? Yes, that is a step I trust. I mean, I don't know if that is in the plan, but this is how you do things to get to a success. What you're saying is an excellent point, and you would have been through systems. I could see that based on the question you're asking me. Yeah. That is how it had to be done.
Right.
And similarly, whether is the supermarket may want fresh cabbages, or the supermarket may also want juices too. Local juice. What is the demand? How do you put the farmers and the people together?
You know, I speaking of something I know happening in Canada here, right? Most of the hospitals, if not all of them, there's a company that supply the hospital all the foods and juices. One particular company, right? They supply the hospitals with all the foods and juices. And I get to know through a friend of mine from Korea who worked as a manager in one of those facility. So I thought they were just making the stuff to sell to the stores. No, 99% of the products is distributed to the hospitals in Ontario. So they don't go into to the corner store and pick up stuff for the hospital or everything. They have one specific company that manufactures stuff just for the hospital.
Yeah, because you could control, you have consistency.
Exactly. So that's another thing because agriculture, I remember there was a time growing up in Grenada when my father worked on the estate. The estate would supply the provisions and all the stuff to the hospital, the prisons, and all the government institutions that need food, right? So now that they don't have the estates anymore as under government control, state farms and stuff like that.
Yes.
How do we supply the hospital with the food? How do you get in the food now? And should there be a system in place to have that been done again so that the hospital is content supply with food from one central place as a government institution?
Well, the first thing I want to say about the government estate, you say that we don't have any. The government need to put the act together and get the estates and them back before we lose things more than estates. I think that the first thing government need to do is to get the estates back. I mean, you can be a government and can control things.
Yes.
Get back what belongs to us. That's the first thing you have to get done. That is one angle. The other part in terms of that whole, what I call a procurement system within the institutions, that has to be looked at seriously because we know that they go directly to the farmers, of course, and that is again the linkage of proper functioning MNIB within the whole space of things, right? Where the farmers can sell the products in one space, and all of these products are then going through and filtering in different ways to those institutions. In that way, the farmer can sell more, they can buy more, certain things that can go, for example, you may have a big Dashin and a big Tanya that the hospital could take because they are cooking, they are in the cooking business, so they can cut it up, whereas a consumer may need maybe like a smaller size. So then all the product can be sold much more conveniently, you know, and all of those mechanisms that need to be looked at downstream. But what you're saying is correct, but we need to take back
the farms
and get our hand all our estates before we lose them, because what else would we lose?
I've noticed that a lot. I was in Grenada in 2018, and I noticed that the Paradise estate was chopped up to the overseers and the people of influence. You know, they are the ones who have the lands now. I'm thinking, why would that the government allow that to happen when they could have kept that going and be able to use it to control the food supply of Grenada? Because those estates are big estates.
No, but let me just clarify a little bit. So let me not confuse in the cutting up, of course, the whole issue with, because there are farmers who want the farmers to have lands. I'm not really worried about that part in my statement. You
get blocked, you get
when it's a whole Grenadian, and then we suffer it, and then we want to talk about food security, produce food and so on. I mean, I don't want to say what I want to say on the radio, but I just say, give me a break.
Yes, I got you. Yeah. Okay. Well, before Pablo come back on, I I've been listening there, but how much influence? We know we have debates and stuff like that, but how much influence does senators have on government implementation of the projects and stuff that they have? Because one thing that we have, we have people here. I'm a senator, he's a senator, and they go in the debate stuff that government have. But how much influence that the senators have that could cause change, is real change to take place?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, and you may not be able to quantify it, notwithstanding the debate. The debate is a debate, as you say, and the debate is a debate. But a lot of good information and critique and suggestion comes out in those dialogues, right? If you listen carefully. And I know that the government listens, all the governments, no, they listen. And the question is, how do they incorporate? You may not see 100% of what you want
happening.
That what is important is that the permanent secretaries, the senior management team of the ministries pertaining to the subject of discussion need to be queuing into those dialogue so that they can also pull out the essence of those contributions. Because a lot of the things we would say at the Senate or even in the lower house or upper house, as the case may be, even if the minister is there and the minister has to defend himself or the senator on the other side, politically defending, sometimes they have to defend their own peers and their own management team, because what is being said is so true that they have to come up with a story to say, what, where you going with that?
Okay.
Why you doing that? But we know in reality, what is being said is true. So the management team, the heads of those departments need to also be, when there is a parliament, to meet your senior management team in your ministries should be listening and following the parliament. Or they should come to the parliament and listen what is going on, because there will be important information there that could help to enable them to get the work done. But the minister would have to, of course, create the own defense or her defense, political. You understand that. Nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't mean that the good points that are made, the good suggestion and consideration is not taken on board. I think that is what is important. But again, John, the parliament again is one place for engagement, and let me not lose sight of that. There are other ways of engagement. Meetings, letters, phone communication. Even within, this was discussed so I don't know if your minister would have raised that, but you need to, so we have to also find different ways, because there is no there is not a protocol, which is maybe, I don't know if you need, I don't need. There's not a protocol for our engagement of, say, the opposition senators or the opposition or the independent senators. There's not a protocol of engagement to say, okay, on a monthly basis, you'd engage the government at that level. On a quarterly basis, that protocol doesn't exist. But you see, in a governance structure, the government also have to look and see what is in its interest and how does he integrate itself, because you are there to provide eyes. That is what we are there, especially in the Senate. The 6 of us is to provide an eye, to provide a review, to provide a critique, to provide a suggestion, to provide an endorsement, and say, okay, good idea, very good, keep going. Well, no, check that out. That then too, and those things need to be taken seriously, despite the optics and the words I may.
Okay, I know one
important rule in monitoring to take the cue.
My final question, and this was to do with back to the cooperative business. We often hear, and we, the focus all we had back then was to get, we know people are, they're good at what they do. They could make shoes, they could make dresses, but management was always a big problem we have identified within the cooperative movement. We know they are good mechanics and they could be bad managers, right? So in going forward with the cooperative movement, I think the whole idea here, apart from letting them be who they are, let them farm, let them make the cars, let them make the dresses, but someone has to be trained to be a manager, how to manage the project management, to run the whole operation. Would that be something that you'll be trying to help with in the future?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're going to watch what I said before and see if I still remember what I said before. but I have agitated on these things because when I, again, just took up this assignment back then, I discovered quickly exactly what you're saying. That even the cooperative that exists, they have the executive or the board, if you call it. But in other cases, the same fisherman, secretary, when he come back, he tired. whether you have the skill or she have the skill,
Mm.
you need to, and that's what I was suggesting in a dialogue with the Minister for Cooperative. And I was so happy, even like now it's maintained. The Minister for Cooperative is the same Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, because all of the cooperatives are within that space. And I'm very happy that that model remain, as I said, both to the minister in that matter, such that we can have a group of persons, what I call technical experts, maybe about 6 or so. They involve in marketing, operations, financial, project writing, development, and they now act as what I referred to back then as administrative hubs.
Yes.
So they can have an office space operating somewhere, they could operate in cyberspace, I don't really care. And they might be servicing now these 3 or 4 or 5 cooperatives in this area. So they organize the meetings for them.
Yeah, got you.
The development opportunities. So they act as that hub, that business hub, right? And then you may have another one in St. Mark who may servicing this among. And if you look at Grenada, you could almost say, okay, at a constituency level, you may have 2 hubs in a constituency. That might even be a good way to do it. And this again, my brother, can be done in various ways. One, the same IDC can be, to use a going word, I don't like to follow trend, but reimagine the IDC. I know recently they were doing some strategic planning. I was supposed to participate, but my schedule was a little bit conflicting. But reimagining the IDC to provide that sort of hub, because they are well placed, not their workers, but they manage a core group of what I call these hubs throughout the country, business hubs. And so they can provide the support to these cooperatives and other upstart cooperatives that may, and you keep them to just that. You don't want them to be servicing individuals because you'll become kind of burdensome.
Got you.
And so they come on space where they work. So I believe that that is a model that, because they need that, the market arrangement, the this, the that, sometimes just to write a minutes, someone can even use a computer and they say, yeah, I take the position, it's nice to take it. So then the position in the executive now becomes more like a board. So when they go to a meeting, they basically, like for example, I manage a GCNA, but there's a board. I mean, the board could say, well, you don't need no manager, you don't need no accountant, you don't need, we gonna, so the chairman go come in and do the administrative work in the company. The other board of directors will come and say, okay, well, I will do the financing. Well, at the end of the day, sometimes do they even have the capacity to do those things?
Right.
So that is why you have to hire people and hold them accountable and report to you for those things. So I think the IDC need to look at that. I don't think that is a very difficult, that would be, again, that is like building roads, it's like infrastructure, you know, so government could fund that. And then at some point, they then able to contribute, if it's at 25%, to keep it going. So that is one model. The other model also that we need to look at in the whole context of things, notwithstanding the Prime Minister's declaration about closing down MNIB, but MNIB again as an institution within its own space, when you look at its mandate and the law connecting to it, is to also provide support to cooperatives, societies, and so on. And so they can also be retooled in such a manner, in addition to other things, provide that kind of operating that space, either in concert with IDC, on its own, and also even GDB and so on. All of those now, because they have a small business unit. But again, Brother John, it come back to Pablo's point. Where is this national symposium to look and see how do we position our economy, how do we get things done?
Yeah, because some of the things that I'm privy to is that
this country is
the one of the things that I know that Agency for Rural Transformation was very instrumental in helping the cooperative movement.
Yes.
Through them was able to get the funding through HEVOS to serve the Secretariat, the transportation and setup. And the second year, first year we got $96,000. That's a grant. And the second year get $500,000 US dollars to set up and run the operations. And the thing was to help train. I remember Spanner and Leon Charles was what we had contracted them to do a number of management training for the cooperative leaders and management team. So I think that would be a nice and another place to go back to get the funding for training and set up a secretariat for the cooperative movement again, to get them to oversee the management aspect of those cooperatives. I think that would be a good place to go.
So in your light, I think what we need is a cooperative department and the cooperative league, which is another important thing. The cooperative league is another one that also operate this hubs to it. That's another consideration we should not lose sight of. And we need to use what we have and see how this whole thing can take place. We don't need to wait 10 years for that to happen. These are not complex things. I mean, look at you sit there and you remember this and what could be done. And pull on people like your expertise to write those concept notes and execute those things. We need to because he's not the one same person doing all of these things, you know. There are people hired and paid to do different works. And if we don't get those things done, it make it difficult. And so when it come back to the parliament, for example, where we officially would comment, it look as if the government is nothing is happening. Because no mechanism is put in place for things that are so obvious and need to happen. And that's why I say that the PSCs, the senior management team in those ministries need to be monitoring the minister hanging on the own. You need to support the minister, that's your job. You understand? Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, my friend and family.
Yes.
Happy to. So you know the chairman of the Nutmeg Association?
No. General manager.
General manager. Great.
Yeah.
I was talking to Rob Posse yesterday. We were talking about you coming on the show. So again, So he was question. Yeah. All right, back to you, Pablo.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Brother John. That was
Pablo.
That was a very interesting portion of
you make the man
this whole thing. I make him what?
I said the man make me sweat. The man, I was like,
you see that? But you handled it very, very nicely. But before I let you go for the afternoon, there's a couple things I just want to get from you. You spoke about collectivism and protocol of engagement.
Correct.
We see in this dispensation, there has been a sort of collectivism and a sort of protocol of engagement between a government senator and an opposition parliamentary representative. And for the first time, we see these two opposition politicians because they ran against each other. And now these two people are collaborating together in the interest of the community. And even to the point of, for the first time too, I believe, you have a team that is that is expected to leave the country to participate in independence celebration in New York. And we have an opposition parliamentary representative being part of that team. So within that concept and the context of collectivism and so on, what's your take on that development?
See, John, when I think it's over, It's like I going to Mount Everest, not only height, but temperature. No. I had to get a raincoat and cloak and muffin.
Well, that's the kind of weather we've been having, you know. It's been raining cats and dogs, as they say, you know, so.
And it's really cold out here today.
Yeah. I mean, watching from the side, because I don't operate in that space, you know.
Right. As a citizen of the country.
Yeah. As I say, non-NDC, sometimes people say I'm an NMP, and the truth is I don't really care whatever they say. What I know is that I have one responsibility to take care of my farmers and fishers, and I do that relentlessly with no fear or favor. That is a clear position. How I vote or how I don't vote, that's a different discussion, but which I don't even discuss. But it's important from another angle that we have to be able to be dialoguing. We have to be able to have an engagement. Now, let us not lose sight of the fact of what you see in public. Because what you see in public is what you see in public. But we also have to be worried and ask ourselves, what is happening behind closed doors? Meaning that, do we have a lot of engagement in the back that we're not seeing publicly? I don't know. And also lose sight of that other side. But in terms of the two sisters working, I think is a good thing where you have your MP working with the powers that be in charge, because who has the resources, right, is one. Now you always have to remember, the government always have the resources. As I don't say, as he's saying that, I don't have no resource. I had to work with the government, I had to work with the ministry, I had to see, I had to turn their hand and see how they could support what they're doing. So that is one angle. These are small communities. You know, these are small communities. And what we have to see at the end of the day, to me, the success or the true realization of this engagement is one. Are the people better off? We got to watch that too. I have farmers and fishermen living in the area. I have to watch that to see how this connection, and I hope they get the message, how that connection is helping my farmers and fishermen living in that constituency. Are they better off? Are they worse off? And so this is one angle. I think too that it also have to let us realize the level of maturity that we have to be in life. And I'm dealing about the allegiance to the parties, dynamic business. I'm dealing with the service to the community. Because Pablo and John, we have to look and see the youth, the younger ones coming up, the message of friendship and peace versus the war and cussing and you know the kind of words that politicians use against one another. And then we say, oh, the community so, what they behaving so, who the leaders are. Mind your business, but work together. There is nothing wrong. Now, whether or not the political leaders endorse or don't endorse, and what it end up to be down the road, that's a different story that I don't get into. But if they can work together and they can bring the benefits, it's like a husband and a wife, you know. They divorce. But when the birthday for the child come, they make sure they show up and they all have a very good birthday party.
Amen to that.
And I see no more. Yes. I agree with you.
I like
there is one thing. I'm going to deal with that in a little while, but there's a link with a bit of information that make certain assertions that I have asked Brother John to share, and I want to get your perspective on it. Brother John?
Okay, let's roll it and see if it works for us here. All right?
Okay.
Yeah. Just give me a second.
Like, you all take me to the Privy Council this evening.
Okay, let me just forget it. Hold on, let me see. It's not playing here.
Reason for African countries are hungry is because their ability to produce their food was destroyed by the right to dump by Cargill. Cargill wrote the agreement on agriculture. And then the junk food industry, the Pepsis and Cokes and Nestle's, wrote the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement and created the Codex Alimentarius to shut down healthy food and push the food that gave us illnesses, 75% chronic diseases. This is not a conspiracy. There is evidence that the corporations wrote the rules. Then it created the billionaires. Now the billionaires rule the world. And I call them the 1%, not because they're 1%, they're just a handful. And when you ask me, what's the optimism? For me, the optimism is a pathetic group of ignorant, selfish men are not more powerful than all the people who've occupied the palace of the president in Sri Lanka, the farmers who've occupied the streets of Netherlands. People have power. We've been made to think we are inert. We've been made to think nature is inert. And all it is a colonization of our mind. The minute we become free and say, we are part of nature, we are creative, and we are powerful. Powerful in a different way. Powerful in the way of Shakti. Powerful in the way of non-violent resistance, of absolutely refusing to be colonized.
Senator, you heard the assertion that is being made there. How much essence is there to that assertion? And be that as it may, if there's any truth to it, and if there's any substance to it, have we been impacted in any way by that?
Yeah, kind of, because of the breaking up, just summarize for me a little bit so that I don't misinterpret.
Well, essentially, the claim that is being made is that big lobbyists have been able to lobby major governments and decision makers, and as such, because they are these big producers out there, they have been dumping substandard stuff and highly processed stuff that has taken away from what you mentioned early in the game, that you can be eating, you can be feeding yourself, but does it have the appropriate, the appropriate substances and so on that can give us the nutritional value and that kind of thing. And that in itself has killed some of the farming economies and communities and so on. And they are the ones who make the rules and the rules of engagement and that kind of thing.
Wow. Pablo, that is a whole program, but I will tell you. No.
I know. That's why we had to bring. That's why we had to bring you back. We already said that.
But let's do some justice to this. Now, if I may see, and I want to start off with laying the framework for the discussion. An important word was used in all of this, which I heard clearly. I mean, most people may not pick it up. Codex Alimentarius. I heard that word, and that kind of, it was broken. And Codex Alimentarius has to do with the food code, which has to do with the standard. That is the international, the world standard for what things would be like, what a Coke should look like, what a fruit juice should look like, what a nutmeg would look like, what a cocoa will look like. These are the standards that would set at a global level, right? Whether it's a sausage, whatever it's fish. So if Grenada can fish, which we want to do and aspiring to do, then we have to be able to meet this World Codex standard. And we come back to the point that John asked earlier on, and having this central facility that will ensure that the food standard and processes is to world class so that we could be able to comply to international market and standards. So whether it's the tamambal, whether it's the forge, whether it's the sugar cake, as the case may be. Now, what the clip said is where you have the big business influencing Codex. That's what he said. Eh? Now, how can the big business influence Codex? The big business influence Codex because Codex has, I think it's about 189 countries or something like that involved. Grenada also is a member. Eh? Not to be clear, let us cite it. Grenada is a member. And each of these countries structurally has what is referred to as Codex committees. In each of these countries, you have what is referred to as a Codex contact point. So in Grenada, the Bureau of Standards, Grenada Bureau of Standards is the contact point to Codex. Okay. In different countries, it might be a ministry, it might be Ministry of Health, different. And I lay in this groundwork with the limited knowledge that I have, and the Bureau maybe could help you better than that. Who makes up these committees? Different national experts. But who are these national experts? So, for example, in Grenada, the GCNA is part of the Codex committee. You may have maybe someone from the Ministry of Health, someone from the Ministry of maybe a vet, maybe a, that is food, you're dealing with food issues, eh? But it doesn't say that you only have to have government involvement on this committee. You also have private sector because industry players. So you could have a Caribbean Agro, you could have a Grenada Breweries. You working in me, eh?
Yeah.
And that is Grenada context. When you go to America, United States, Great America, big billionaire. When you go to Canada, John, you know those big companies up there could have members. And even if they don't have members, they can lobby through the different agencies and organizations in different ways. In different ways. So I know that Grenada want to export fish. But you know, Canada is a big fish producer processing fish. So you use your Codex thing and say, you know, we want to ensure that the level of this or the some specification should be this or it should be that. And you table that at your Codex, you make recommendations at the global level. If Grenada don't have the amount of resource to even attend these meetings, to even monitor what is going on, you think you could change that? So why is here she might speak about the dumping? The first thing is, do you have the resources as a country? What is the emphasis and the focus of the government, because government has to support the Bureau of Standards sufficiently that it can actively participate and contribute to the discussion and have the technical capacity? Do you have the lab to test and verify those standards and the specifications, etc., so that you could argue your position? So you really dig up a can of worms that we could discuss for 2 hours. So what you're saying there, we are the masses. But I have some good news, but I cannot give you the good news now because I cannot officially give you the good news pertaining to certain recent engagement that Grenada had regarding the same Codex and food standard. I don't have the official capacity to speak to that, but that news is going to come true. Just how we speak out, we have to get a cadre of diplomats. We need to have this cadre of technical persons for the different industries. So that is why, Pablo, initially we spoke about, remember that discussion, what is it you want to export? What is the markets you want to go to? What are the standards and requirements? And who are the people you're going to have in Grenada or in the diaspora who can learn the technical expertise to support just this part, you know? We don't even start talking about producing the product. We don't start talking about the farmers there. Because even, for example, issue of cadmium, the issue of pesticide use in the farms, all of these things have the minimum residual levels. All of these things and them is what the codex and them managing. But can you even test and see if you have pesticide residue in Grenada? If you don't have it, how the hell you plan to participate in that discussion? If you don't have the scientists that is trained, who is going to test it? Then you have to send it out with the same. So think you alone and know that. Just so they know it in codex, just so they have the infiltration in the labs. So we are the mercy. So I say this to say that as a nation and as a government, the government need to keep an eye on this, just as they keep an eye on diplomats, etc. So running a country is not a simple thing. And this is why I speak about the issue of the PSCs and the technical people in the ministries have to be monitoring all of these things. Otherwise, your ministers going to fail because your minister cannot be all. Remember, the minister is a halfway administrator technically and a politician. That's what they are. So you have to sit down and do the drills and those things. And as a nation, we need to start understanding those contexts. So even all this tongue hall meeting and all this dialogue we have, if we don't start zeroing in, brother, and these cyber issues, let's go over. But look at what you play. Play this for the nation and get the responses. Then you realize the danger that we are in. And I just want. I don't really want to go to the others.
I got you. I got you.
So you're really prepared. You're really prepared for me.
Yeah, there is excuse me. There is a lot that can be said about that. And these are some of the discussions that we need to have as a people, not just as Grenadians, but as a region, because as you said, we at their mercy, you know, and these are some of the things that we need to discuss going forward.
But we can win, but we could win if properly.
I understand what you're
saying. Planning and preparation.
Yes,
can make us win.
We are going to continue that conversation further down. But before we summarize and so, there is one final clip with a matter that I would, coming out of the budget itself, that I would like you to address. Just one short final clip. Brother John, you have it lined up?
Pablo, you're going to have to buy me dinner.
when next you come to the museum at the at the Nutmeg Pool.
Yeah, all right, good. We have a date. All right.
It came out here that we must not lose sight of the issue of the taxing pertaining to the carbonated beverages and so on. I thought maybe that tax could have been a little bit higher, right? Because that would also stimulate our local entrepreneurs or local agro-processors to be able to provide more beverages for our school feeding program. So there are some little minor details that the average eyes may not pick up that I have seen there that we need to look.
Senator,
yeah,
there are those who would say that many of our people depend on and make their living by bringing in those carbonated drinks and so, and it is a major part of the income generating opportunity for the quote unquote vulnerable people and those small business operators. And there you are, even saying that the tax on these things should have been higher. Let's get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And help people to understand the points that you were making.
Right. There are two things. One, I would backtrack halfway on one point, is that my understanding, I based on what I heard, because remember I didn't have the paper in my hand. What I discover, well, and I hope I still am on the right track, is that this tax is applying for carbonated drinks across the board, whether it's local or whether it's imported. I sort of picked that up through the consultation I saw on Juice a few days ago with one of the local manufacturers speaking about the impact on their beverage. So it seems to be across the board, whether it's imported or whether it's local, right? So that is because what I saw it was a differentiation at the time to prevent imports and to support the local industry and even the local beverages. That is another discussion we could deal with in our local cabinet. So that's what I thought. But I discovered eventually it is for both import and both local. Either way, it being higher, I have no problem with that because we know the issues with diabetes, we know the issues with the sugary drinks, we know the issues with the hyperactivity surrounding all of those things. That is in its broadest way. However, as I would have mentioned to certain government officials, and I would have also said it also in my presentation during the budget, handled properly. I'll tell you why. If the intention is to manage the sugar content, which we say that going to create all this diabetes and all of this stuff, and we know that not only is sugar that would cause diabetes, there are many other type of food that would cause that, but the focus here is on the beverages. Is not handled properly as far as I'm concerned. You remember where we left off, and you plan the program very well. The Bureau of Standards, the Codex, remember all that discussion? There are standards, my brother, for these things. So you can see, right now, things as normal, the juice and the carbonated drinks that come into this country that are made locally, it has 10% sugar in it. Yes, because generally the formula has not changed. Because I don't think the government just get up and say, oh, we need to change that. Something must have triggered, apart from the result of diabetes. I sought it, and I hope they did. And I hope that someone could say there was 10% sugar, do analysis, and show all the beverages, percentage sugar, averaging percentage. Then you say, okay, based on that, it is in our interest as a country to reduce the sugar content in these drinks that are coming into this country. Just like when we did with plastic, and we did with many, and we did with vehicles, and we see vehicles under 10 years. We didn't say no vehicles that is used, you know. We say 10 years. Similarly, we're saying, let's put a bomb, say maybe 2%, 3%. But if you go back to Codex, and you go back to the same, even the CROSQ, the Caribbean Regional Organization for Standard and Quality, they have also have to that amount, to 2% or 3% sugar. And anything above that, you could pay even 50%. So we don't say no. So the trafficker is not out of business. We just saying trafficker, bring in something healthy now. Bring something healthy. We didn't say no packaging. We say bring recyclable, reusable packaging. We still have packaging. Plastic bag gone, but we still have bags. So similarly, you could control that and make it less sweet, less sugar inside it. So this is the philosophy in my thought. And this is not a difficult feat. By reducing that, let the Bureau of Standards do its work. When they come in, you take the samples, you monitor it, and you apply your tax rate accordingly.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. Any closing words, any parting words as we close for the afternoon?
Well, I would say, it's always a pleasure to be with you. We had some discussions about 2 years ago when I just started off. And I must say the engagement is very good. Your persistence of making sure that I come, you follow up. Even if it was about 3 weeks ago, you engaged that you need me. You followed up because I had to plan to make sure that I would be around for that time. and the professional way in way you engage and guarantee that I would be here. I think we need to have that sort of arrangements in the media space. So that's one thing.
Okay, thank you.
I think too, having this opportunity here, we're speaking to not only Grenada, but we're speaking to that audience for which you have. It also gives us a voice in that space so we can share and so on. For the farmers and the fishers, you mean that their voice, their concern, because we need a program for that for itself. We are able to discuss and share what is going on. I think that the issues raised was very pertinent issues. And I trust that I would have been able to share based on my knowledge and abilities sufficiently well to improve the awareness of others. We may not agree on a lot of things that I would have said, but the issue is that what I've said would help to stimulate further discussion, further realization for one dream. We all in Grenada, whether we living here or abroad, want to see a better place in all. We all want that. The question is sometimes, how do we get there? And we all have to work together, no matter what, to get there. We have to see each other for what it is, meaning that if you want to share, you want to engage, you engage for the moment. And also, from a political standpoint, politicians are politicians, and we must learn to leave them alone. And we need to spend more time ranting and raving about topics like which we just discussed. Because if we do that, the GDP for good talk and the GDP for ideas to move forward would improve. Because a lot of the other GDP we're seeing, Pablo, and hearing is negative GDP, is pollution, greenhouse gases, that kind of thing. So let us involve in positive discussions to enable this country to be better for all of us now and in the future. And I want to wish everyone who listening 2023 prosperous, 2023 productive, your dreams come true. And of course, I say I'm open to be back, not every month, maybe next 6-7 months, because when you hold me so for almost 3 hours, you got the dinners. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you very much again, Senator Roderick St. Clair, the agricultural senator for, the senator who represents the agricultural fraternity in this country. Is also the managing director of the GCNA and the man behind the museum that's been set up at the Nutmeg Station in St. Mark. So if you haven't visited as yet, come visit St. Mark, visit Sunset City, and come and experience the museum that has been set up. So thank you very much again, Senator, and we look forward to having you back. I know you said about 3 hours. I know it's not quite that, but we did.
But you're still by dinner. You're still by dinner.
Yes, we kept you. We kept you for longer than I had intended. But you know, the information is so pertinent, and fortunately, John Callis and his GEM FM affords the opportunity. It has that kind of flexibility, you know, where we are not into this box where we have to and we must end at a particular time. So we usually kind of bend it a little bit, you know. Yeah. So in closing, I want to say, based on some of your closing comments, that this administration, and not just the administration, from the time Deacon Mitchell, no Prime Minister, became the political leader, he has been speaking about holding politicians accountable. So I trust that where we are in this space presently, in this quote unquote transformation era that we will have that new kind of mindset where people feel more committed and much more in a manner that they feel free and less restricted to hold the politicians accountable, because as you say, politicians will be politicians. We know I said that you must return because there's a lot that can be said in the public interest, and we want to ensure that we continue to educate and to liberate, as GEM FM motto goes, and that people get to appreciate that there are opportunities for you to lobby the government, and that people take a greater interest in the discussions that take place at the decision-making level.
Correct.
The whole issue of building human capacity, we have to really lend some more energy into that so that we know, because one of the things that we experience in many of the regular organizations, we do have people who, yes, they have the passion, they have the commitment, you know, they want to be involved, and they end up taking positions or being nominated and elected for positions. And then you find out that they don't really have a clue as to what the responsibilities that comes with the office. On the issue of closing of MNIB, while that has been said, and so we did also hear the Prime Minister say that whatever entity, even if MNIB is closed, that whatever entity that emerges must be able to serve the interest of the farmers and to do what MNIB was initially, established to do. I believe to address some of those issues, like what you mentioned with the control of the sugar content in some of these things, and so there need to be a collective approach across the region in terms of addressing some of those things. And because we see that when we work in that manner, we benefit much more. Because, for example, could you imagine if all of the OECS countries had their own dollar, what the state of the economy would have been right now, and what the value of the dollar would have been to the US? It would not be $2.70 as it is right now. So we have to take into consideration the benefits that can be accrued from addressing things in that collective way. And one final thing, in terms of message to the younger ones, and as regards how we as grown-ups really conduct ourselves, and that is another special discussion that has to take place. But I must speak to that based on an experience I had yesterday. I do leathercraft, and I travel from here to Sapodilla Road in Grand Bacolet. My leather supplier, that's where he's located. The leather comes from Trinidad. And traveling yesterday, I had to get off in St. David's because of a development. And it was very early, after 7 coming up on 8. So I was just cruising, cool morning. And so a bus eventually came and I got on the bus. And the music that was playing was a recording of a dance hall session. And I cannot repeat the words that were coming from it. It was just pure, downright, outright lewdness, right? And the passengers were some people going to work and so, and you had children, the majority of them were children, 8, 9, 10, that kind of thing. I went, it was not a very long distance, so I grind and I got to my destination, I got off, got my product, returned, a bus came, and it was the very same bus. So I said to the conductor, I said, wow, I got you going up, I came up with you and now I'm returning with you. Got into the bus, and it was the very same lewd music that was playing. And I'm telling you, I couldn't enjoy that all the way back to St. George's now, right? Because you know where Grand Bacolet is. I guess 2 of you know where Sapodilla Road is. Yeah. So I'm traveling from there now to go to town. So I was sitting in the back seat. I said to the conductor, I said, conductor, can I say something to you? And he said, yes. I said, conductor, why is it that is only this lewd music that you guys play on this bus? And he said, we play other music too. I said, but I came up with the bus, and that's what you were playing. And there were children, infants really, on the bus, and that's what they were being fed. And immediately, the driver changed the music to some grown-up stuff, Lovers Rock and what. And everyone in the bus from the front seat will look back to see who is this person, that raised that issue. And I further said to them, I said, are you aware that when that is all you feed yourself, that's not good for your spirit. No. That is all you feed yourself. It's not good for your spirit, And so for the rest of the way, all the way to town, you had decent music being played and so. Got off the bus in town, the conductor helped me. I said, thank you, have a blessed day. And me and one of the passengers were walking off together, and he more or less thanked me for my intervention because he himself was enjoying the change in the music and so. And I say this to say, as grown-ups, we have to be careful with what we put out there and the kind of standards and how we display ourselves and so on, the things that we say. And typically, that's the kind of music that you would find being pounded on the buses during school time when they're going to pick school children up and drop them off and that kind of thing. And it is no wonder that our young people, in terms of the values and so, because when I was growing up, we didn't have people thinking about committing suicide and that kind of thing. I never know no 12 to 14-year-old committing suicide when I was growing up, this is boring and I'm so bored. That was not part of our vocabulary, when we were growing up. So we have to be careful as to the things that we buy into, and it's not everything that comes from overseas or is depicted on the TV screen that is good for our ethos and is good for our being. And speaking of which, we are going to be breaking with the tradition of this Saturday evening program, and on Thursday coming at 2 p.m. we will be having Dr. Theodore Ferguson speaking about using birds and the rearing of animals and so as therapy. How I never knew about that. He is very much involved in that. Many of you who on Facebook, you see him posting those photos of rare species, because many of us, we hear about Grenada dove, but we've never actually seen one, So it was in a conversation with him, he mentioned that, and I immediately Googled it, and I saw that in some prisons situations that they're using that as therapy, and he's speaking about how that can impact if we were to initiate it in our school system, and so how it can impact the mindset and the thinking and the mannerisms and the values and so on. So we'll be having a special session at 2 p.m. Grenada time this coming Thursday. I thank you once again, Senator, and I know you are going to be back sometime down the road. I thank those of us who joined us this afternoon, and I look forward to you joining us again. And most so, thank you, Brother John, for enabling us to have this space where I can bring these kind of things to the fore. Because as you know, my programs are different to the standard. This is Pablo Griffith Paul signing off for today. Well, all the best.
I know you have to get the senator some food. I could donate. I could recommend that you go to Crystal Delights and tell them that John recommended to be fed. I think you're familiar with Crystal Delights and Benjamin Street, right?
Yes.
So you
yes.
Go
Yeah.
It's my brother's establishment. Yeah, well.
Okay, that's opposite the gas station there, right?
Yeah. So you could go and let them know that John could
send me to collect.
Yes.
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 To collect, Pablo. Yeah, just
right. You heard that, right?
Yes.
So that's from John's end.
Yeah.
You know, so when you come visiting next time, you know, maybe we'll have a drink by Shy or
Right.
by Shy's outlet and have some, you know, something of the sort right here
Yeah, of
in
course,
Sunset City.
definitely.
Just go
All
to
right.
Crystal and Leonard and tell them John sent you.
Mm.
All right.
All right.
Good.
Saturday evening in Grenville, start going to the drags. And if the drag still exist?
No,
No, that's gone. That's gone. All right. So let's go up the street by Crystal Delights and let them know that that is
Okay.
there.
All right. Yeah. Good.
All right, man. It's been a
Take care.
pleasure being here with you.
All right.
Thanks.
Yes.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All
One
right.
love.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
Bobby, yes. Good.
Mhm.
Yes, Pablo.
Education, this is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education to be recognized anywhere you go. Have your certificate to show. Enjoy any kind of happiness. Knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and
Yes, you've been listening to a live broadcast from Gem FM. Message to the Grassroots with Senator Roderick St. Clair and host Raphael Paul Pablo out of St. Max, Sunset City to be exact. And I do hope that you join us again this Thursday, Thursday evening. Yes, there'll be a special show put on by Raphael Paul this evening, Thursday evening, the 26th, with Dr. Theophilus. All right, so tune in for that on Thursday evening, yes, at 2 o'clock. That's what it's gonna be. All right. So I'm out of here, folks. Have a blessed night, blessed evening. Enjoy the rest of the night. Bless up.
for employment, yes, employment, you must be intelligent. It's essential, very essential to have your credential. But if you're block-headed like a mule, no one will employ a fool. Be the last one to be hired and the first one to be fired. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you gon' get real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be a misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't follow idle companions or you will get burned. To earn, you got to learn.